I lost everything defending my son Brody, my life savings, my marriage, my faith in justice. But when he slipped me a napkin with 3 numbers in prison, I discovered the most devastating truth of my life. My name is Frank Holloway. Until 2 years ago, I was the guy everyone in Millbrook, Indiana, called when their horse went lame or their dog needed surgery at Tuticoyem. For 30 years, I built my life one patient at a time, one saved animal, one grateful family. I had everything a man could want: a thriving veterinary practice, a beautiful wife named Marlene, who knew exactly how I liked my coffee and still held my hand during scary movies after 28 years of marriage, and my son Brody, who'd grown from a kid who rescued injured birds to a man who could fix any car that rolled into his shop. You think you know your family. You think you know the woman who sleeps beside you every night, who bore your child, who cried with you when your parents died. You think you know these things the way you know your own heartbeat. Natural, certain, unquestionable. I was wrong about everything. The morning that destroyed my life started like any other. October 15th, 7:23 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was pouring coffee when the police cars pulled up to Brody's auto shop across from the diner. Not just 1 or 2 patrol cars, 6 vehicles, FBI, state police, local sheriffs. They surrounded my son's business like he was some kind of terrorist. "Dad, what's happening?" Brody had called me, voice shaking. I could hear shouting in the background, doors slamming. "They're saying I robbed an armored truck. Dad, they're arresting me for armed robbery." Armed robbery. My son, who once cried for an hour after accidentally hitting a squirrel with his truck, who spent his Saturdays teaching kids in the neighborhood how to change oil and check tire pressure for free, who still brought his mother flowers every Sunday after church. The charges were serious. First National Bank's armored truck hit 3 days earlier on Route 42. The driver locked in the back while someone made off with $2.3 million. The guard, Jerome Watts, left bleeding on the asphalt with a head injury that put him in intensive care for a week. And somehow my son's work gloves were found at the scene. His specialized mechanic gloves with his initials that I'd bought him for Christmas. Those gloves were stolen from my shop 2 weeks ago. Brody told me through the jail's plexiglass barrier that first night. His orange jumpsuit made him look pale, sick. I reported it to the police. "Check the report, Dad. October 1st, someone broke into my shop and took tools, including those gloves. But the police report had mysteriously vanished. No record of any break-in. The detective, a man named Carl Brenner, who I'd once treated his German shepherd, wouldn't even look me in the eye. Evidence is evidence, Frank, I'm sorry. My wife, Marlene, sat in the car during that first jail visit. When I came back out, she was crying, but there was something strange about her tears. They felt rehearsed, calculated. "We need to face reality, Frank," she said, gripping the steering wheel. "Our son did this terrible thing. The evidence is overwhelming. He says he's innocent. Of course he does." Her voice turned sharp, almost angry. "What criminal admits guilt? Frank, we need to think about our future. Our retirement. We can't throw everything away on a lost cause." That was the first crack in my perfect life. The moment my wife of nearly 3 decades referred to our son as a lost cause before he'd even been tried, before we'd even heard all the evidence, before we'd fought for him. But I didn't see it then. I was too focused on saving Brody to notice that Marlene had already written him off. Too desperate to find a good lawyer to realize she was pushing me toward a specific one. Too terrified of losing my son to understand I'd already lost my wife. The truth was hiding in plain sight, wearing the face of the woman I loved, sleeping in my bed, planning my destruction while kissing me goodbye each morning. The robbery wasn't just about money. It was about betrayal so complete, so devastating that even now, 2 years later, I still wake up some nights thinking it must have been a nightmare. But it wasn't. And the 3 numbers my son slipped me on that napkin 6 months into his sentence would reveal exactly how deep the betrayal went. Before I tell you how everything fell apart, you need to understand what we had, what we lost, what made the betrayal so unthinkable. Picture Millbrook, Indiana, on any given Saturday morning. Population 8,000. The kind of place where the high school football games pack the stands and the diner still serves pie made from scratch. Main Street runs 6 blocks with brick buildings from the 1920s that house the same family businesses that have been there for generations. The Holloway Veterinary Clinic sat right between Morrison's Hardware and the bakery where Marlene bought fresh bread every Tuesday. I opened that clinic in 1994 with a loan from Marlene's father and more determination than since. The first year nearly broke us. I remember Marlene sitting at our kitchen table pregnant with Brody, sorting bills into 2 piles. Can't pay and have to wait. She never complained, not once. She'd rub her belly and tell me we were building something that mattered. "Frank, this town needs you," she'd say when I worked 18-hour days. "Every animal you save, every farmer you help, it's all adding up to something bigger." She was right. By the time Brody was in high school, I was treating livestock for half the county. Dairy cows, horses, sheep, and every dog and cat within 50 minutes. People drove past to 2 other vets to come to me because they trusted me. Because I'd get up at 3 a.m. if their mayor was falling. Because I'd work out payment plans when times were tough. Marlene managed everything behind the scenes, the books, the inventory, the scheduling. She had this gift for remembering every client's name, their kids' names, their pets' birthdays. She'd send cards when animals passed away, real handwritten notes that meant something. People loved her for that. I loved her for that. Our son Brody grew up in that clinic. He'd do his homework in the back office, help me with the gentle animals, learned that healing things, fixing things, making broken things whole again was good work, important work. But while I fixed animals, Brody fell in love with fixing machines. "Dad, it's like solving puzzles," he told me when he was 16, covered in grease from rebuilding his first engine. "Every strange noise, every problem has a solution. You just have to listen close enough to hear what the machine is trying to tell you." He was brilliant with cars. By senior year, teachers were bringing him their vehicles instead of going to the shop in the next town. After high school, he worked at Thompson's Auto for 3 years, learning everything old Ray Thompson could teach him. When Ray retired, Brody took a loan and bought the shop. 25 years old and a business owner, I'd never been prouder. The shop sat right across from Murphy's Diner on Main Street. Brody renamed it Holloway Auto, painted the sign himself one weekend while Marlene and I helped clean and organize. He hired 3 guys. Curtis Webb, a kid just out of high school who needed a chance. Miguel Santos, a master mechanic who'd moved from Chicago, and Dennis Farmer who'd been fixing cars since before Brody was born. Business was good. Really good. Brody had this reputation for honest work, fair prices, and fixing problems other shops couldn't figure out. He restored classic cars on the side, beautiful work that had collectors from Indianapolis driving down to commission projects. That vintage Mustang he was working on for Mrs. Dalton was going to be on the cover of a regional car magazine. Our life had rhythm. Sunday dinners at our house, the one on Maple Avenue with the wraparound porch and the oak tree Brody used to climb. Marlene would make pot roast, Brody would bring beer from the microbrewery 2 towns over, and we'd sit on that porch afterward, watching the sunset behind the cornfields. "You know what I love most about our life?" Marlene said one of those evenings, maybe 2 weeks before the robbery. "It's complete. We have everything we need right here." Brody had laughed, scratching our old golden retriever Rusty behind the ears. "Mom getting sentimental on us, Dad?" "Your mother's right," I said, pulling Marlene closer on the porch swing. "We've got a good life, a complete life." I meant it. We'd worked 30 years for this moment. The clinic was paid off. The house was paid off. Our retirement accounts were healthy, not rich, but comfortable. Brody was established, successful, even starting to date a nice girl named Jennifer from the bank. We'd built exactly the life we'd dreamed about when we were young and struggling. 3 days later, the police arrested our son, and I learned that sometimes the most complete-looking lives are the ones about to shatter completely. The first time I saw my son in jail, he looked like a ghost wearing his skin. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on his frame and his hands shook as he picked up the phone on his side of the plexiglass. "Dad, I swear on Grandma's grave. I didn't do this," Brody said, his voice cracking. "I was at the shop all morning. Ask Miguel. Ask Curtis. Ask Dennis. They were all there. We were working on 3 different cars." I believed him instantly. Not because I was his father, but because I knew that voice. It was the same voice he'd used at 7 years old when he swore he hadn't broken the kitchen window and I'd found the neighbor kid's baseball in our yard. The same voice at 16 when he promised he hadn't been drinking at the Johnsons' party. My son couldn't lie to save his life. His eyes always gave him away. And right now, those eyes held nothing but desperate truth. But the evidence was damning. The prosecution laid it out like a roadmap to conviction. First, the gloves with his initials found next to the unconscious guard. Then, the financial record showing Brody's shop had a $50,000 equipment loan coming due in 2 weeks. Security footage from the bank showed someone roughly Brody's height and build, though the face was obscured by a mask. And then the worst part, Brody had no alibi for the exact hour of the robbery. The guys were all on a parts run, Brody explained frantically. I sent them to pick up supplies from the warehouse in Fort Wayne. I was alone at the shop for maybe 90 minutes. But surely there's security footage from your shop, I said. The cameras went down that morning, power surge or something. I called the security company, but they couldn't send anyone until the next day. Every explanation sounded like an excuse. Every piece of bad luck seemed too convenient. Even I could see how it looked, and I believed him completely. Gerald Ashford came highly recommended, a defense attorney from Indianapolis with a record of winning impossible cases. Marlene had found him through her cousin, a paralegal in the city. He sat in our living room 6'3", with silver hair and a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, laying out exactly how bad things were. The prosecution's case is strong, Gerald said, spreading photos across our coffee table. They have physical evidence, motive, and opportunity. Your son is looking at 25 to life if convicted. Armed robbery with injury to a guard. That's serious time. But he's innocent, I said. Gerald's smile was patient, practiced. That's what we'll argue, but innocence and reasonable doubt are two different things. This won't be cheap. My retainer is $100,000. Trial could run another $200,000, maybe more if we need expert witnesses. Marlene gasped. Frank, that's our entire retirement. What choice do we have? I looked at her, expecting to see the same determination that had carried us through every crisis of our marriage. Instead, I saw something else. Calculation, like she was weighing costs and benefits instead of our son's life. Maybe we should consider a plea deal, she said quietly. Marlene, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This is Brody we're talking about. I know who it is, Frank. Her voice turned cold. I also know that throwing away our entire future won't change the evidence. That night started the first real fight of our marriage. Not the little spats about money or chores, but a fundamental break in how we saw the world. I liquidated our retirement accounts the next morning, sold savings bonds we'd held for 20 years, cashed out my life insurance policy. When that wasn't enough, I sold the clinic to my junior partner, Dr. Kevin Walsh, for 70% of its value because I needed the money fast. You're destroying us for nothing. Marlene screamed the night I sold her mother's jewelry pieces that had been in her family for generations. The evidence is overwhelming. Our son is guilty and you're too blind to see it. What if you're wrong? I asked quietly. What if our boy is telling the truth? Then God help us all, she whispered. But I can't watch you throw away 30 years of our life on a fantasy. The trial lasted 3 months. Each day, I watched the jury's faces harden as Gerald seemed to fumble basic procedural moves. He didn't challenge evidence I thought he should challenge. He didn't call witnesses who could have helped. Curtis, Miguel, and Dennis all testified, but under cross-examination, their stories developed inconsistencies. Small things, but enough to create doubt about Brody's alibi. When the guilty verdict came, Brody didn't cry. He just looked at me and mouthed, "I'm sorry, Dad." That night, Marlene left. No goodbye, no explanation. Just divorce papers on the kitchen table and a note that still burns in my memory. You chose a criminal over our future. I choose myself over your delusion. 6 months into Brody's sentence at Westville Correctional, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above Hendrick's hardware store. The place smelled like oil and old wood, and the radiator clanged all night like someone beating pipes with a wrench. I'd taken a job at the pet supply warehouse on Route 40, loading trucks for like $12 an hour. It was a far cry from being Doc Holloway, the man people trusted with their beloved animals. But had it paid for gas to visit my son every week and kept food on my table. The divorce had taken what little I had left. Marlene got the house on Maple Avenue, the one where we'd raised our son, where we'd celebrated 30 Christmases, where I'd carried her over the threshold as newlyweds. She also got half of nothing since I'd already spent everything on Brody's defense. The only thing I kept was my old truck and a photo album she didn't want, filled with pictures of the three of us during better times. Every Saturday, I drove 2 hours to Westville, sat in the visiting room, and talked to my son through scratched plexiglass. We talked about everything except the case, the weather, baseball, how Miguel was keeping the shop running with the new owner who'd bought it at auction, how Mrs. Dalton still asked about him, still wanted him to finish that Mustang when he got out. 24 years, 7 months to go, Dad, Brody's would joke, but his eyes were hollow. Prison was killing something inside him one day at a time. This particular visit felt different from the moment I walked in. Brody kept looking over his shoulder, watching the guards, studying the other visitors. His leg bounced under the table, a nervous habit from childhood that only surfaced when something was seriously wrong. "Dad, I need you to listen carefully," he said, leaning close to the glass. His voice dropped so low I had to strain to hear him. "Don't react to what I'm about to do. Just put it in your pocket." He pulled out a napkin, the thin brown kind, from the cafeteria, and slid it across the small ledge beneath the partition. I palmed it like he'd taught me to palm cards when I was trying to learn magic tricks to entertain him as a kid. The paper felt damp with sweat. "There's something at Union Station downtown," Brody continued, his words coming fast and quiet. "Locker 447. The keys taped under the bench at Riverside Park. You remember the spot, right? Where you taught me to fish." Of course I remembered. The wooden bench with our initials carved in the back rail from when he was 8 and thought vandalism was the height of rebellion. We'd spent countless Saturdays there, fishing poles in the water, talking about life while pretending to catch a bluegill. "Brody, what is this about? I can't explain now. They monitor everything here. Phone calls, letters, visits. But Dad, after you see what's in that locker, you'll understand everything. The robbery, the trial. Why Mom really left, everything." A guard approached our table. Thompson, according to his badge, built like a linebacker with a face that suggested smiling might cause physical pain. "Time's up, Holloway." Brody stood quickly, but as I started to leave, he grabbed my wrist through the small opening. His grip was desperate, stronger than I'd ever felt from him. "Dad, after you see what's in there, promise me you'll be careful. The people involved in this, they've already destroyed our family. Don't let them destroy you, too. And whatever you do, trust no one. Especially not anyone from the case. Not the lawyers, not the cops, nobody." The guard pulled him back. I said, "Time's up." As they led him away, Brody looked back one more time. The expression on his face was something I'd never seen before. Not fear exactly, but a kind of grim determination mixed with hope. Like a man who'd been drowning finally catching sight of shore. I sat in my truck in the prison parking lot for an hour, the napkin burning a hole in my pocket. When I finally looked at it, there were just 3 numbers written in pencil, 447. Below them, in tiny letters, Brody had written, "The truth always finds a way." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Brody's face, heard the urgency in his voice. At 3 a.m., I gave up and drove to Riverside Park. The place was deserted, lit only by a single street lamp that flickered like it was sending Morse code to the darkness. The bench was exactly as I remembered it, weathered and splintering, our initials still visible, but faded. I ran my fingers along the underside until I felt it. A small brass key taped with what felt like half a roll of duct tape. My hands trembled as I peeled it free. Whatever was in locker 447, Brody had risked everything to tell me about it. As I held that cold metal key, I knew my life was about to change again. I just had no idea how much. Union Station at 6 yachts in the morning felt like a cathedral before service. Empty, echoing, filled with the kind of silence that makes you want to whisper. I walked through the main terminal, past closed shops and empty benches, following signs to the locker area. My footsteps bounced off the marble floors, announcing my presence to nobody. The lockers were tucked in a corner behind the old shoeshine stand that had been closed for years. 3 walls of metal boxes, some small enough for a purse, others large enough for suitcases. I found 447 in the back row, chest height, Unremarkable except for the fact that it might contain the answer to everything. The key slid in smooth. The lock turned with a click that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet station. Inside sat a large manila envelope and a portable hard drive, the kind you can buy at any electronics store. My hands were steady as I pulled them out, but my heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I sat on a nearby bench and opened the envelope first. The top document made my legs go weak. A bank statement with Marlene's name across the top, but not our joint account. This was something different. Account opened 3 years ago at First National. The same bank that had been robbed. The same bank where Jennifer, Brody's girlfriend, worked. The deposit started small. $500 here, $1,000 there. Then, 6 months before the robbery, someone deposited $400,000. The deposit slip was attached. The signature was Marlene's, but the source of funds line read, Investment Return, Ashford Holdings. Ashford. Gerald Ashford, our defense attorney. The next document knocked the wind out of me completely. Screenshots of text messages between Marlene's phone number and Gerald's. The dates started 8 months before the robbery. Marlene, is everything in place? Gerald, the gloves are planted. Make sure Brody's alone at the shop tomorrow morning. Marlene, what about Frank? Gerald, he'll pay me to lose the case. You get the insurance money from the divorce. I get my fees and we split what's left from the truck. Marlene and Brody, Gerald, 25 years minimum. By the time he gets out, we'll be long gone. My vision blurred. I had to read it 3 times before my brain would accept what my eyes were seeing. My wife and our lawyer had framed our son. They'd planned it, orchestrated it, executed it with the precision of a Swiss watch. The hard drive was worse. I plugged it into my laptop right there in the station, not caring who might see. The first file was security footage from a traffic camera 2 blocks from Brody's shop. The timestamp matched the morning of the robbery. Brody's truck was clearly visible, parked in its usual spot, never moving during the entire time frame of the crime. This footage had supposedly been corrupted according to the prosecution. The next folder contained photos. Gerald Ashford at the robbery scene 20 minutes before police arrived. How was that possible? How did he know to be there? Another photo showed him talking to Jerome Watts, the injured guard, outside a bar 2 weeks before the robbery. They were shaking hands, Watts accepting an envelope. An audio file came next. Marlene's voice clear as day. Coaching someone on what to say. Curtis, you need to say you were gone for 2 hours, not 1. It's important. Brody was alone the entire time. Curtis Webb's nervous voice responded, Mrs. Holloway, I don't feel right about this. 50,000, Curtis. Enough to start fresh somewhere far from here. Or I can make sure everyone knows about your drug arrest in Indianapolis that you forgot to mention on your job application. The last file destroyed me completely. A video from Brody's shop, date stamped 3 weeks before his arrest. He was alone, talking to a hidden camera he must have set up himself. If something happens to me, Brody said, looking directly into the lens. Check my mom's phone records. She's been asking strange questions about the shop's insurance policies. My schedule when I'm alone. She had a meeting with Gerald Ashford last week that she said was about updating their will. But Gerald's a criminal defense attorney, not estate planning. I found a burner phone in her car with only 1 number in it. I'm documenting this because I don't know who to trust anymore. Dad, if you're watching this, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I kept hoping I was wrong about Mom. I kept hoping I was just being paranoid. The video ended with Brody looking directly at the camera. I'm going to hide this drive and make sure someone knows where to find it if anything happens to me. Curtis knows where it is. Despite everything, he's a good kid, just scared and over his head. I sat in that empty station for an hour, staring at the evidence spread across my laptop screen. My wife of 30 years had sacrificed our son for money. She'd watched me destroy myself trying to save him, knowing the truth all along. She'd left me, not because she thought I'd chosen a criminal over our future, but because her part in the plan was complete, and she needed to distance herself from the aftermath. I drove straight from Union Station to the FBI field office in Indianapolis. No stopping at home, no calling anyone first. The evidence on that hard drive and in those documents was enough to destroy multiple lives, and I wasn't going to risk it disappearing. Special Agent Diana Rodriguez listened to my story without interrupting, her dark eyes scanning each document as I laid them out on her desk. When I showed her the video of Brody explaining his suspicions, she immediately called in 2 other agents. "Mr. Holloway, this is one of the most elaborate frame jobs I've seen in 20 years, she said, pulling out her phone. "We're going to need you to stay here while we verify everything and get warrants." Within 48 hours, they arrested Marlene at her sister's house in Chicago, where she'd been living under her maiden name. Gerald Ashford was taken into custody at his office, his secretary watching in shock as they let him out in handcuffs. Curtis Webb, terrified and guilt-ridden, had been waiting for this moment. He broke down completely, confessing everything within minutes. Mrs. Holloway approached me first. Curtis told investigators, tears streaming down his face. She knew about my past, about the drug arrest I thought I'd left behind, said she'd ruin me if I didn't help, but she'd pay me $50,000 if I did. All I had to do was lie about being gone longer than I was. I'm so sorry. I've been dying inside every day knowing Brody was in prison because of my lies. Jerome Watts, the supposedly injured guard, admitted Gerald had paid him a $100,000 to take a deliberate fall and identify Brody from a lineup despite never seeing the robber's face. The head injury that put him in intensive care had been self-inflicted, carefully calculated to seem severe, but caused no permanent damage. The FBI found the missing money within a week, $2.3 million split between offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands under Marlene and Gerald's names. They'd been planning to leave the country once Brody's appeals were exhausted, and I'd given up hope. Marlene's confession came during her 3rd day in federal custody. No tears, no apology, just cold facts delivered in the same tone she once used to discuss grocery lists. Frank was content with his small-town life. She told investigators while I watched from behind one-way glass. 30 years of looking at sick animals, living in the same house, eating at the same diner every Friday night. I wanted more. I deserved more. Gerald showed me how to get it. Even if it meant destroying your son, Agent Rodriguez asked. Marlene's response still echoes in my nightmares. Brody was collateral damage. He would have wasted his whole life in that shop anyway, at least this way. His existence served a purpose. 6 weeks later, I stood outside Westville Correctional as the gates opened. The February wind was bitter, but I barely felt it. Brody walked through those gates carrying a paper bag with his belongings, looking like a man reborn. He was thinner, older around the eyes, but smiling in a way I hadn't seen in almost a year. "How did you know about the locker, son?" I asked as we embraced, holding him tighter than I had since he was a child. "Curtis visited me last month," Brody explained as we walked to my truck. His conscience was eating him alive. He told me everything, including where Mom had hidden backup evidence in case Gerald tried to double-cross her. He'd overheard her on the phone mentioning Union Station Locker 447. He'd been too scared to go himself, but thought maybe if I could get word to you somehow, you'd know what to do. "I'm sorry, Dad," Brody continued as we drove away from the prison. "Sorry about Mom, about everything you lost trying to save me. I thought about our house on Maple Avenue, now sold to pay legal fees. The clinic I'd built from nothing, now in someone else's hands. The retirement accounts emptied, the savings bonds cashed, the life I'd spent 30 years building, all gone. Then I looked at my son, free and vindicated, his whole life ahead of him again. I didn't lose anything that mattered, I told him. Come on, let's go home." We drove back to Millbrook in comfortable silence. As we passed the veterinary clinic, I noticed a new sign out front. "Welcome back, Doc Holloway. Job waiting whenever you're ready." Dr. Walsh had added it just that morning, he told me on the phone. Brody smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from him in so long. "Small towns don't forget good people, Dad." "No." I agreed, thinking about how the community had already started a fund to help Brody restart his shop. They don't forget the bad ones either. That night, in my small apartment above the hardware store, father and son shared a simple dinner of spaghetti and garlic bread. No pot roast like Marlene used to make, no fancy presentation, no pretense. But something more valuable filled that cramped space. Truth, trust, and the unbreakable bond between a father who never stopped believing and a son who never stopped hoping. Brody's shop reopened 3 months later with a loan from the community bank and donations from people who'd known him all his life. I returned to veterinary practice, working part-time with Dr. Walsh while rebuilding my own client base. Every Sunday, Brody and I have dinner together, just the two of us. We don't talk about Marlene, who's serving 15 years in federal prison. We don't talk about Gerald, who got 20. We talk about the future, about the garage Brody's expanding, about the new golden retriever puppy I'm training, about Jennifer from the bank who stood by him through everything and wears his engagement ring. Now, sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what truly matters. My son's freedom, his faith in me, my faith in him. These things are worth more than any retirement account. The truth really does find a way, even when it seems impossible, even when the whole world is built on lies. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that fighting for truth and family is always worth it, please share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about a time when you had to choose between what was easy and what was right. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of betrayal, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds of family that survive even the darkest moments. Thank you for listening to my story.